I parked my 2018 Honda Civic at the end of the cul-de-sac and took a breath, bracing myself for the 3-mile drive down memory lane. 12 hours on my feet, pouring lattes and sketching logos at the coffee shop had left me bone-tired. All I wanted was to collapse into my childhood bedroom, flip through my latest design portfolio, and let the silence lull me to sleep. Instead, as I crested the hill, a crowd of neighbors lined the sidewalk, staring at my parents' craftsman-style house like it was some traveling circus act. Their phones were out, cameras rolling. A little girl in a ponytail held up a sign that read, "Hatch Eviction Fail," in thick black marker. My mother, Linda, stood on the front porch behind a tripod streaming live on TikTok. Her voice crackled through the phone's tiny speaker. "You're witnessing the end of Emma Green's freeloading days. Hit that heart button, folks." My heart lurched. The cherry blossom sprinklers in the front yard soaked my sketchbooks, their pages curling into soggy spirals. I eased the car forward and nearly ran over my Wacom tablet straps torn loose from a rogue gust. My back seized in pain as I stepped out, hands trembling. Everywhere I looked, cardboard moving boxes lay half empty. Dad Michael Green was crouched beside a crate, red spray paint in hand, stenciling the word "failure" across its flaps. Behind him, my half-sister Tina, that 31-year-old beauty influencer, recorded every angle for her Instagram story. "Good content, right?" She laughed, tossing her hair. I should have screamed. I should have stormed them off their manicured lawns. Instead, I stood rooted to the driveway, blinking through a haze of shame and disbelief. The sprinkler system hissed like a haunted breath. My portfolio prints, hand-torn sheets of vibrant logo concepts, floated in shallow puddles. My MacBook Pro lay in pieces at the curb, its screen shattered, glittering like fallen stars. A ripple of applause rose from the front yards. Mrs. Patel, the HOA president, 3 doors down, clicked her tongue and typed LOL into the live chat. Finally, she said, shaking her head, "Somebody rid our block of that eyesore." My legs gave out, but I caught myself on the Civic's roof. The early evening sky bled pink over the rooftops, mocking me with its calm beauty. I closed my eyes and let that pink wash over my rage. This was my rock-bottom moment, the one I'd warned myself not to let happen. Yet here I was, humiliated in front of everyone I'd ever waved to on the school bus. My design dreams, my freelance hustle, reduced to soggy papers and a viral hashtag. When I opened my eyes, something inside me had shifted. I uncrossed my arms, wiped a bead of sweat from my brow, and took a steadying breath. If they wanted a performance, fine. I would give them one, but on my terms. I bent down, scooped up the driest prints I could find, and slipped them beneath my jacket. My father looked up, mid-spray, eyelids narrowing. He barked something about me owing them $12,000 in room and board, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of an answer. Instead, I locked eyes with Tina, her phone inches from my face. "Smile," I said softly, and she grinned like she'd beaten me. I spun on my heel, gathered my portfolio bag from the sidewalk, and stepped back into the Civic. My hands were shaking so badly, I risked dropping the car keys. But I managed to start the engine. As I reversed out of the driveway, I caught one last image in the rearview mirror, Dad raising both arms in triumph. Neighbors cheering. The TikTok live stream had already crossed 25,000 views. My chest tightened. Was that the sound of my heart breaking or forging steel? I drove away in silence, the roar of the Civic engine a lifeline. Every ping and buzz from my phone felt like a hammer blow, the TikTok notifications climbing, comments piling in. "What a joke. She doesn't even have a degree." "Good riddance," the messages said. Yet buried among the hate were 3 words that stopped me cold. "Can I help?" I parked under a streetlight 2 blocks away, hands finally stilling on the wheel. My phone glowed with a direct message from someone I'd never met, a screen name called @Marcus Designs. I saw the live. "My agency is hiring. You have talent. Let's talk." My breath caught. Social media had just torn me to pieces, and now it might just save me. Lightning flashed in the distance, or maybe it was just my pulse. Whatever came next, I realized was beyond rescue or ruin. It was my chance to turn every mocking comment into fuel for a comeback. I didn't know who Marcus was, or whether I could trust him. But I did know one thing: I would never let anyone else spray paint my future again. And then my phone buzzed again, this time with an email from CFPB confirming they'd received my complaint about my parents' business practices. A single sentence scrolled on the screen. Your case number is 2025 NY 4821. My pulse raced as the streetlight flickered above me. My life had just become a battlefield, and I had no choice but to fight back. Something cold and electric settled in my chest. The night was far from over. The dawn was pink with promise when I finally tore myself away from the streetlight and slid into the driver's seat. My hands still trembled as I keyed in the Airbnb address: Cozy Cabin number 4821, Catskills, NY. 3 days of shelter and solitude, just enough time to let my rage cool, piece together my broken portfolio, and chase down that message from @Marcus Designs. My tank hovered on empty. Tomorrow I'd have to find a gas station. But right now, I needed a roof I could lock behind me. The 2-hour drive north felt like navigating between worlds. As I passed orange fields and weathered barns, memories flickered of school trips and summer fairs, times when my biggest worry was acing a sketch. Now every mile marker reminded me I'd burned so many bridges that I'd become a ghost to my own family. My GPS voice was calm. Turn left in 800 feet, but my mind raced. Could a freelance designer with nothing but soggy prints on her floor ever outrun her own name? I finally spotted the cabin at the end of a gravel lane, pine needles drifting across the peeling green door. A rusted mailbox read 4821, its flag snapping in the morning breeze. My heart lurched. This was it, Exile version 2. I fumbled my phone to read the keypad code from the Airbnb message, hands slick with sweat. Inside, the floorboards creaked under my weight, and the scent of pine mixed with musty linen wrapped around me like an old sweater. A brass lantern on the counter stared back, its wick blackened from last winter's guests. Boxes of mismatched furniture sat against knotty walls. A plaid sofa stained from spilled cider. A wrought iron bed frame without a mattress, and a chipped wooden desk with scribbles in the corner: Jessica's guest book, please sign in. No Wi-Fi password, no router in sight. My stomach sank. The world was supposed to be at my fingertips, design files backed up in the cloud, Marcus's DM ready on my screen, the CFPB case number glowing in bold. But here my phone showed no service, and the cabin's silence gaped wide enough to swallow my panic. I dropped my duffel onto an empty chair and ran my fingers over the desk's surface, where pencil shavings and doodles curled like fossils. My Wacom tablet lay half unboxed in a corner, its cables twisted around an antique lamp. I wrenched open the packaging, praying for a signal, but the tablet's LED remained stubbornly dark. No juice, no connection. Frustration coiled in my chest. I'd come here to rebuild, not to relive helplessness. Outside, crows cawed from an ancient oak, their black feathers glinting in sunlight. I lit the lantern and felt its soft glow chase away the cabin's shadows. My breath hitched as I surveyed my rescued prints: crisp logo sketches, mock-ups for a local bakery, a storyboard for a YouTube promo, all saved from the wreck. I smoothed them on the desk and studied each curve and hue, reminding myself why I'd chosen design over the safe path my parents had drawn. I sat on the sofa, knees pulled to my chest, and pulled out my phone again. 10 missed calls, 25 notifications on TikTok. Marcus's message still blinked. I believe you. Talent is talent. Let's talk tomorrow. I hit reply and typed, yes, I'm in. What time? My thumb hovered over send. No Wi-Fi. The cabin's windows rattled as the wind picked up, and I realized how fragile my lifeline was. A desperate laugh escaped me. Then I noticed the guest book. Its pages were dog-eared entries from travelers thanking Jessica for peaceful nights. But tucked between those notes was a folded slip of paper, handwritten, "Welcome, Emma. If you need help, call me 518-54821. No name, no signature." My pulse stuttered. Why did someone here already know I was coming? My lantern wavered as dusk crept in. Shadows pooled in corners, and the floorboards groaned under the weight of memories I'd refused to revisit. I crawled into the wrought iron bed frame and fumbled with the blanket piled at the foot. The mattress felt musty, like it hadn't been flipped in years. Still, exhaustion claimed me before I could question the odd note. I woke to a scratching noise against the window pane, a rat or something bigger, heart hammering. I sat up and listened as the cabin seemed to hold its breath. My lantern guttered, "Sard," and I realized the oil was nearly gone. I reached for my phone, desperate for light, and found 3 new voicemail notifications from Marcus from the CFPB office and one from an unknown local number. "This is Jessica. I'm your host. Call me ASAP." A cold knot formed in my gut. The Airbnb listing had warned of spotty cell service, not total abandonment. Now I had proof that someone was watching me, my every move, someone who knew my name, my schedule, even my emergency contacts. My pulse pinged on my wristwatch, which beeped with low battery. I threw on my jacket, grabbed the guest book in my duffel, and crept to the door, half expecting it to swing open on its own. Outside, the air was sharp with pine and earth. The gravel crunched under my boots as I circled the cabin. No footprints but mine, yet the scratch at the window persisted thinner now, a fingernail dragging the glass. I froze. Was it a stray branch or someone's hand? My breath turned to mist in the cold night air. If this was a mistake, a trap set by my own family to humiliate me again, I'd walk straight back into the fire rather than be hunted in the dark. My phone buzzed. "Another DM from Marcus, check your email sent you the Zoom link. Let's meet at 10 a.m. Catskills time." Relief washed over me, hot and sudden proof that not everyone wanted to see me fail. But as I keyed the lock code in reverse to peek inside, a figure slipped across the kitchen window, tall hunched silhouette, blurred. No lantern, just the shape of someone dressed in dark layers. I yanked the door closed, heart pounding like a jackhammer. The wind howled through the treetops, and for the first time since the eviction, I felt truly alone. My mind raced. Was this host playing both sides? A family ally, or something worse? A stranger drawn by rumors of a viral spectacle? My lantern's light danced across the wooden siding, illuminating a single trail of footprints leading away into the woods. I pressed my ear to the door, straining to hear. Branches cracked a distant car horn, then silence so deep it roared in my ears. My fingers trembled on the guest book's note, "Call me ASAP." Part of me wanted to dial Jessica and demand answers. Another part wanted to vanish into the Catskills wilderness and vanish forever. I exhaled and the breath whooshed out in a shaky plume. Tomorrow's Zoom call could change everything and offer a lifeline, my shot at redemption. But tonight I had a choice: stay and face whoever or whatever prowled beyond the window, or flee down the dark road without looking back. I slid the guest book into my jacket pocket, tucked my sketches close, and scanned the darkness one last time. Lightning flashed over the trees, crackling like static through my bones. My phone buzzed again. "CFPB case, Road 225, NY 4821, under review. Expect correspondence, a lifeline, a mandate." And beneath it, one chilling message from the unknown local number: "Welcome to the Catskills, Emma. Let's meet in the morning." The lantern flickered off. My world went black. Dawn broke with a pale light through the cabin window as I fumbled for my phone, heart still pounding from last night's shadow. I dialed the mysterious number in the guest book, 518-555-4821, and held my breath. A soft voice answered. "This is Jessica." She sounded warm, unhurried. Nothing like the furtive silhouette I'd glimpsed. I explained my situation quickly. No Wi-Fi, no heat, no clue why someone was watching me. She apologized, promised to drive up with a portable hotspot and a propane heater in 10 minutes. Relief flooded me. For the first time since eviction, I felt helped, not hunted. While I waited, I laid out my rescued sketches on the plaid sofa, the bakery logo, drafts, the YouTube storyboard, the freelance contract I never got to sign. My hands shook as memories of my parents' spray-painted insults rushed back. I fingered the corner of a mock-up where I'd drawn my dream studio: big windows, a long work table, sunlight pouring in. That dream felt distant, but seeing it on paper reminded me why I couldn't give up. The unfairness gnawed at me, a grown woman, branded a failure, forced to sleep in a stranger's cabin. Yet here I was, still drawing, still fighting. Jessica arrived in a beat-up Subaru Outback, racks of camping gear strapped to the roof. She carried a bulky router and a bright orange heater, boots crunching on gravel. "I know what it's like to lose everything overnight," she said, eyes kind behind wireframe glasses. She set up the hotspot on the desk and flipped the heater switch. Warm air hissed out. "I saw the live stream," she whispered, lowering her voice. "That was cruel. I've got recordings saved every frame. You want them?" My chest tightened. Neighbors had cheered as my father degraded me. Jessica's gesture felt like justice. I grabbed my laptop bag, still battered but functional, and copied her recordings onto my drive. By mid-morning, I had a steady connection. The little router blinked blue, and Marcus's Zoom link sat in my inbox 10 a.m. sharp. I sipped lukewarm coffee from the stained cabin mug and stared at my reflection in the black screen. No makeup-tired eyes, but I straightened my shoulders. When the clock struck 10, I clicked join. Marcus and 2 colleagues appeared in gallery view, professional crisp. I shared my portfolio and my story, how my parents had claimed me as a dependent while siphoning my rent money, how they'd trashed my belongings in front of the neighborhood, how I was rebuilding under hostile skies. My voice wavered once when I described the live stream humiliation, but I saw them lean in. They asked sharp questions. How many clients did you lose when the footage went viral? What's your turnaround time on a project? Can you work remotely at scale? I answered confidently, showing mock-ups and timelines. When I finished, Marcus smiled. "Emma, we've been burned by flaky freelancers before. You've gone through hell yet kept creating. That grit is rare. We'd like to bring you on for a pilot project, redesign our holiday campaign. We pay upfront and cover your travel if you want to come to our NYC office." My breath caught. A real contract, real money, and a foot in the door of a major agency. Tears stung my eyes as I said, "Thank you. Yes, I'm in." After the call, I leaned back and watched the cabin's wood grain swirl in the heater's glow. Jessica peeked in. "Congrats," she said. "I'll keep an eye out tonight. Your parents might try to track you down." I pressed my hand to my chest. Fear and excitement tangled together. I realized I still had to file the complaint with the CFPB. Jessica's recordings could be evidence of deceptive business practices, and I needed to warn Marcus's team about potential fallout if my parents recognized my name. But first dinner, the propane stove hissed as I boiled water for ramen, and I found canned tuna in my bag, a humble meal, but mine to prepare. As dusk gathered, I snapped photos of the soaked prints I'd rescued, backing them up to Dropbox through the hotspot. A message pinged CFPB. "Your case is assigned to Agent Torres. Expect a call within 48 hours. I exhaled, heart slackening. Justice in motion. Then my phone lit up again, one missed call from an unknown number with a 212 area code. "Emma, it's your father. We need to talk." The screen glowed with his name, Michael Green, and I felt a chill. My parents had never called me after eviction until now. My finger hovered over answer. The wind rattled the cabin door behind me, like the world trembling on its axis. I realized the battlefield wasn't miles away. It was right here at my fingertips. I stared at the incoming call, my ramen forgotten, the heater humming softly. With trembling resolve, I pressed answer. My thumb hovered over the green answer button as my father's name blinked on the screen. "Emma," he began, voice soft with false concern. "I saw the headlines. I'm worried about you. Can we talk this out?" My heart pounded against my ribs as I swung my legs off the bed. I'd promised myself I wouldn't let him gaslight me again. "You humiliated me," I said, voice steady, despite the tremor. "You claimed I owe you tuition money. You trashed my stuff, then broadcast it live. Now you expect me to drop my complaint to CFPB." His sigh crackled through the speaker. "That was performance art gone too far. We're parents, you owe us respect. I'll call off Jessica, refund the Airbnb if you retract everything." His words hung in the frosty cabin air like poison. I paced the narrow living room, eyes darting to the guestbook note in my jacket pocket. "You think I'm a child," I shot back. "I've got evidence you overbilled clients, misused my rent money, even opened credit cards in my name. You broke our trust. I'm just returning the favor." A long pause. Then his voice dropped. "You'll regret this. Nobody wants to burn family bridges." He hung up before I could reply. The line went dead, leaving me in a silence thicker than the draft creeping under the door. My chest ached with anger and relief I'd stood up to him, but now I was even more exposed. I dialed Marcus without thinking, my fingers slick on the screen. He answered on the second ring. "Emma, congrats on the pitch, your portfolio won them over." Relief washed me in warmth. "Dad called," I said. "He's threatening to cancel my Airbnb and sue me for defamation. I'm stuck in a cabin with no heat if Jessica turns on me." Marcus swore under his breath. "I'll see what legal we can do. For now, tomorrow, at 10 at WeWork, don't worry about your flight. We'll sort it." His confidence settled a knot in my gut, but I knew promises on Zoom couldn't melt the frost gathering at my ankles. No sooner had I hung up than my phone buzzed again, a text from Agent Torres at CFPB. "Emma, your case looks solid. We're scheduling an interview with you on Friday in Lower Manhattan. We need your recordings and copies of your filings by end of day." My fingers trembled as I typed back, "On it." The glow of my phone was the only light as the propane heater rattled and died, its flames sputtering out. I grabbed my jacket and the guest book, slipping the recordings onto a USB stick. The cabin's shadows grew teeth, reaching for me in the dark. A knock at the door froze me in place. My breath plumed in the cold. "It's Jessica," she called softly. Through the frosted window, I saw her silhouette. I yanked the door open. She clutched her phone, face pale. "Your dad called Airbnb. They're about to boot you out for a breach of house rules. He said you trashed the place." My heart hammered. "That's a lie." She nodded miserably. "He's got the upper hand. Airbnb policy favors the host. They want you gone by midnight." I pressed a hand to my mouth. No heat, no Wi-Fi, and now no shelter. Rage boiled up hot and bright. "Give me 10 minutes," I said, sealing the door before she could protest. I scrambled to pack my essentials, sketches, USB drives, my battered laptop, the guestbook note. Every item represented months of work and hope. My Wacom tablet slid into its case. The propane tank hissed warnings as I disconnected it. Outside wind whipped through the trees, rattling the cabin's timbers like ghostly applause. I slammed the desk drawer shut, locking my past into place, and bolted the front door key in my pocket. Out on the gravel drive, I breathed in the sharp scent of pine and damp earth. I fumbled for my phone under the guestbook's message. "Call me ASAP." I dialed that number again, 518-555-4821, but there was no answer, only voicemail. The headlights of Jessica's Subaru were gone, swallowed by the pine line. I squinted into the darkness. The gravel road stretched away, twisting downhill. I had 30 minutes to get to the highway before Airbnb's lockout, and no guarantee my car would start in the cold. Every nerve in my body screamed to run toward safety, toward vengeance, toward anything but this trap. I slipped behind the wheel, turned the key, and heard only a feeble click. My heart lurched. I tried again. The engine protested, then died. Rain began to patter, cold and steady, soaking the guestbook note in my pocket. My breath clouded on the windshield. I fumbled for the flashlight in the glove box, the beam cut through the windshield in a thin, jittery arc. That's when I saw it, footprints leading from the cabin door toward the woods, fresh and uneven. Someone knew I'd be out here. My pulse ratcheted up. I hit the unlock button and stepped onto the gravel, rain soaking through my shoes. The footprints vanished under ferns and moss, but I followed each step, slipping in mud. The forest closed in around me. Tall pines loomed like silent sentinels. My flashlight beam caught a glint of metal, an empty Airbnb key fob lying in the dirt. My own key. Whoever took it was close. I spun the beam, catching movement, a shadow melting behind a tree. Adrenaline flared as I backed away, phone in hand, my thumb trembling over 911. The wind gusted, carrying a voice low and familiar. "Emma." My blood ran cold. Rain slicked the pine needles as I pressed myself against the rough bark heart. Hammering so loud, I feared it would echo through the forest. The beam from my flashlight grabbed at shadows, but revealed nothing. Only mud-slick roots and the rattling underbrush. My breath came in ragged bursts. Every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't leave my sketches, my laptop, the USB stick with Jessica's recordings. Whoever or whatever watched me wasn't going to stop at stealing a key. "Emma!" The voice whispered again, closer this time. Gravel crunched under a heavy boot. I swallowed hard, tested my phone, no signal. The forest seemed to lean in each branch, a gnarled finger pointing at me. I clicked on the flashlight again. Nothing. Then through the shaking light, I saw movement, a dark figure stepping onto the path, hood drawn tight. Panic gave way to fury. "Who are you?" I shouted, voice cracking. "Show yourself!" The figure paused, then flicked off the hood. Moonlight revealed Tina's face. Half-sister turned online tormentor eyes rimmed red mascara streaked down her cheeks. My chest heaved. "Tina!" My voice was a whisper. "What are you doing here?" She hesitated, gaze flicking past me into the trees. "I'm sorry," she said, voice low. "I didn't know. I thought I was helping Dad get you out of here. He's been calling everyone your name is toxic. He paid someone to scare you off the property." A heavy weight settled in my gut. Dad had gone beyond eviction, he was hunting me. My hands clenched into fists. "You helped him!" I hissed. She shook her head, tears glinting in the flashlight's glow. "I recorded everything for my channel, thought it'd be a hit. But then I saw the fallout. I saw the 911 call from Airbnb. The CFPB notice you got. I couldn't live with it." She stepped closer, voice urgent. "We have to get you to safety. There's a ranger station down the road 2 miles. I have my car parked near the trailhead." My pulse spiked 2 miles through unknown woods at night with a sister who nearly tried to ruin me. But as thunder rumbled overhead, I realized I had no choice. We moved silently along the path, mud sucking at our boots. Every snap of twig sent my pulse into overdrive. Tina's breath steamed in the cold air. "I've sent your designs to Marcus's team," she whispered. "They've already drafted a contract. They'll fly you out first thing in the morning. You'll be safe in the city." Relief warred with mistrust. "Why help me now?" I demanded. She winced, voice trembling. "Because I'm your sister, and I'm done watching you get crushed." A distant branch cracked, and I spun flashlight flickering. Nothing but darkness. We finally broke through the trees into a gravel clearing. Tina's Subaru was parked half behind a boulder, its lights off. She unlocked it with a click. Headlights flashed on, illuminating the steaming cabin behind us, its dark windows blank. I slid in mud, smearing the upholstery. She drove off before I could thank her tires spitting gravel as the cabin receded in the rearview mirror. I sank against the seat, exhaustion and adrenaline mingling in my limbs. The air smelled of wet asphalt as we reached the ranger station, locked, ticketed, deserted at this hour. Tina cursed softly. "My bad," she said, scanning the lot. "But the main road is 2 clicks ahead. We can hitch a ride at that diner on Route 16. I nodded, gathering my soaked sketches and electronics. Thunder rumbled again as we trudged to the road the forest swallowed behind us. Half an hour later, headlights carved through the rain, a rusted tow truck engine ticking. I raised my hand, soaked through, and the driver slowed. He eyed us in the mirror. "You folks need a lift?" he asked. Voice gravelly, Tina hopped in first, leaving me to climb aboard the flatbed behind the cab, arms wrapped around my knees. The wind slapped my face as we barreled down the highway, rain slicing the air. My teeth chattered, but I held onto the USB drive tight, the only proof I had. At the diner, neon flickered over wet pavement, Rootstein Diner, open 24 hours. Tina led me inside. The warmth hit me like a blanket. A bell jingled over the door as we shook off the rain. An old waitress, in denim overalls, pointed to a booth. I slumped into vinyl, blinking against fluorescent lights. Tina slipped behind the counter and ordered 2 coffees. Steam curled from the mugs as I placed my laptop and notebooks on the scarred formica. She slid into the seat across from me, face solemn. "I emailed Marcus and CFPB. Both confirmed you're officially on board. We need to get you to New York tonight." My throat tightened. "But what about Airbnb? If I can't stay there, where do I go?" She tapped her phone. "I just booked you a night at the Wythe Hotel in Williamsburg. It's within your budget. They have a promo code for creatives. I used my influencer deal." A small smile flickered on my lips, tiny proof that she still believed in me. Just then my phone buzzed, a text from Agent Torres. "Your CFPB interview is scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. Prepare any additional evidence." I tapped out a reply. "Thank you, see you Friday." The waitress refilled my mug. I took a long sip, letting the caffeine warm my bones. My gaze drifted to the window, rain-coated cars streaking by each one, carrying someone safe and unbroken. I realized I was neither, but I was moving forward. Tina cleared her throat. "I know I owe you an apology," she said. "I was a jerk chasing likes, hurting you for views. But I've learned that clicks aren't worth someone's life. I'm with you now." I studied her face in the harsh diner light, pale and earnest. Trust was a luxury I hadn't afforded anyone in weeks, yet her presence felt like an olive branch. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Let's just get through tonight," I said. "Tomorrow I pitch at WeWork." Then we exposed Dad for good. She nodded, eyes bright. But my phone pinged again, another unknown number, this one with a New York area code. "Emma Green, we've received a package at your parents' home, a copy of your CFPB complaint, and your W-2s. Signed, Michael Green." My stomach dropped. He'd found my filings. If he got that evidence first, he could claim defamation, revoke our Airbnb deal, even block my agency contract. Fury lanced through me. I slammed my cup onto the table, coffee sloshing over the rim. The waitress jumped back. "Sorry," I muttered, cheeks flaming. Tina's hand tightened on mine. "We'll stop him," she said, voice low. The diner's neon buzzed overhead, casting everything in harsh pink and blue hues. Outside, the rain let up, leaving the world slick and glassy. I gathered my things, sketchbook, laptop, the USB drive, each item a piece of my fight. I glanced at the tow truck driver through the window. He nodded, understanding something unspoken. I dropped bills on the table, standing. Tina rose, slipping an arm around my shoulders. As we stepped into the night, the city lights twinkled on the horizon like promises and threats. In the distance, an ambulance siren wailed, cutting through the silence. My pulse ratcheted up, Dad's first strike on his own health. Or a new front in this war. My breath caught as I realized that no matter how far I ran, his shadow would follow. I gripped Tina's hand tighter as we hailed a yellow cab, racing toward Manhattan. And the next battlefield, the siren's echo still ringing in my ears. I woke to sunlight filtering through the width of the hotel's industrial-style windows, the Brooklyn skyline gleaming like a promise through the haze. My head throbbed, part caffeine withdrawal, part lingering adrenaline. Tina was already up, tapping away on her phone in the corner. "CFPB wants your recordings by noon," she said without looking up. "Marcus's legal emailed. He wants to meet at 8 a.m. sharp at their office near Union Square. And your WeWork pitch is at 10. My chest tightened as I counted it off, 8, 10, and 2. 3 appointments, 3 different boroughs, no margin for error. I splashed cold water on my face in the chrome-plated sink, meeting my own reflection. Tired eyes, a thin sheen of sweat, and yet determination. At 30, I'd been branded a failure by the people who were supposed to love me most. Now the symbols of success, Manhattan Towers, agency contracts, government agencies, stared me down with equal weight. The dream of a stable career by 30 had eluded me, but maybe the real American dream, reinvention, resilience, was playing out now. Down in the lobby, Tina and I grabbed strong coffee from the hotel's espresso bar. The barista, an older gentleman with silver hair, winked when I set my CFPB case printout on the counter. "Big day," he asked. I nodded, flashing a tired smile. "Just another Tuesday." He slid me an extra biscotti. "You're gonna nail it." His faith warmed me more than the caffeine. Back in our room, I unplugged my portable hotspot. Jessica had lent me a stronger one, and loaded Jessica's recordings onto my laptop. Every frame of my father's live-streamed cruelty, every cheer from the neighbors, every spray-painted failure in screaming red. I organized folders for CFPB, for Marcus's legal team, and for a journalist who'd reached out last night, someone named Linda Cheng at the Brooklyn Eagle. I'd agreed to meet her at 7 p.m. to share my side of the story, hoping to reclaim my narrative before Dad's version spread further. I checked into Marcus's email. My meeting was at 8 a.m. at Reed & Cooper Agency, 28th floor, 200 Park Avenue South. I imagined the lobby, marble floors, chrome signage, suited assistants. I pictured myself in that glass tower, portfolio in hand, proving that creative grit was as valuable as corporate polish. But first, CFPB in Lower Manhattan at 2 and 8-minute walk from Canal Street Station. Then WeWork at 10 Union Square, another train ride. My schedule was a tightrope. By 7:30, I was out the door, dragging my rolling case across the cobblestones. Tina waved from the corner umbrella, shielding her from a light drizzle. "Call me after CFPB," she said. "I'll be at WeWork by 9:30. I nodded, swallowed a knot of nerves and hailed a yellow cab. The city moved around me, taxis, honking delivery bikes, weaving early commuters in trench coats clutching coffee. I stared at the skyline where golden towers rose above soot-stained rooftops. This was my battlefield now. At Reed & Cooper, the doorman studied my hotel key, then buzzed me in. The elevator zoomed up, no stops. On the 28th floor, glass walls framed a panoramic view of Manhattan's artery streets coursing with life. Marcus was waiting, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. "Emma," he said, standing to hug me. "They loved your story. Legals drafted your contract. They'll cover CFPB legal fees, and you'll co-lead a redesign for our nonprofit clients." Relief exploded like fireworks. But before I could celebrate, Marcus's phone buzzed. His face darkened as he read a text. "Your dad's here," he said softly. "He just walked into our lobby." My blood ran ice cold. I froze, clutching my portfolio. Marcus guided me behind a frosted glass partition. "He said he wants to clear the air," Marcus whispered. "He's asking to meet you in 10 minutes. I pictured my father in a crisp suit, the same smug smile he wore when spray painting me. My pulse hammered. This was insane. Reed & Cooper didn't allow family drama on the floor. But Dad had power money and no hesitation to wield them. I backed out of the meeting, voice trembling. "I need to postpone." Marcus shook his head. "He's here to intimidate you. I'm calling security." My stomach lurched. Security would escort Dad out, escalate the feud, probably leak to media. I swallowed. "No," I said. "I'll handle this." My heart-pounded confrontation was the only way I'd reclaim control. I walked toward the reception portfolio, held like a shield. Dad stood there, phone pressed to his ear, glare sharp as broken glass. He hung up and fixed me with a cool stare. "Emma," he said, voice smooth. "Glad to see you've made it this far. But this charade ends today. You have two choices: retract your complaint at CFPB and retract your lawsuit, or face defamation proceedings and professional ruin. Our family will disown you." He paused, smug. "Pick your poison." My chest tightened, but I forced my voice calm. "I'm not here to beg. I'm here to work." I gestured toward the vast office behind him. "Marcus offered me a contract because he sees my talent, not your money. Security," I called. "Please escort my father out." Dad's lips curved. "Trust me, you'll regret this at CFPB tomorrow." He turned and strode away, glancing back with a warning that felt like a blade. Within minutes, security appeared, murmured with Marcus, and Dad was gone. The office manager apologized profusely. Marcus exhaled relief and anger mixing. "Let's get this done," he said. "After contract signing, I'll personally drive you to CFPB." I nodded. Adrenaline lacing my limbs. I signed the contract, Mark Green's signature blurred on the dotted line, and pocketed a clean copy. This symbol of victory felt heavy, but it was mine. True to his word, Marcus drove me across town in his sleek black sedan. We wound through Chinatown alleyways past City Hall, where pigeons pecked at spilled pretzels, and down Broadway's glimmering lights. I stared out the window, mind racing tomorrow, at CFPB lunchtime pitch at WeWork. The city blurred into streaks of neon and glass. Marcus dropped me at the front of CFPB's unmarked building on Center Street. "Good luck," he said, and patted my shoulder. "You're going to crush it." I took a breath and walked inside. The lobby was stark concrete floors, fluorescent lights, a single desk with a stern-faced receptionist. She checked my ID, handed me a visitor badge. "Wait here," she said, pointing to rows of plastic chairs. I sank into a chair badge clipped to my collar and looked around at the others. A man in a rumpled suit clutching legal folders. A middle-aged woman with tremors in her hands holding a spiral notebook. A young immigrant family speaking in hushed Spanish. My fight for justice suddenly felt like part of something bigger, people pushing back against systems stacked against them. The injustice of my eviction was a drop in the ocean of stories here. Each one carried hopes of accountability and truth. My phone buzzed a text from Linda Chang, the journalist. "Heard you were at Reed & Cooper. Stand firm. I'm running your story tonight. An anchor of solidarity." But with 10 minutes to go, I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling the weight of every step that brought me here. The receptionist called my name. I followed her down a sterile corridor to a small conference room. 2 agents sat at the table, Agent Torres and a colleague. Behind them, a CFPB logo glowed on the wall, a symbol of oversight fairness, and the promise that even ordinary people could hold the powerful to account. I took a seat laid out Jessica's recordings, bank statements, text logs. My chest was tight, but my hands were steady. I told them the story: 3-tiered betrayal, emotional, financial, public humiliation. They listened, interjected questions, typed notes. When I finished, Torres closed her notebook and offered a small smile. "This is compelling evidence," she said. "We'll move to a formal investigation." "You did well." Relief washed through me, hot and sudden. I exhaled, letting the breath rush out like releasing a held storm. But as I stood to leave, the air conditioning kicked off 2 gusts of cold air that sent a shiver through me. Torres's colleague glanced at the wall clock. "You have 6 minutes before your next appointment." My blood ran cold. 6 minutes to Union Square, through security trains, stairs, a city marathon. I nodded, voice caught. "I'll make it." I sprinted out of the room, badge, forgotten adrenaline surging. The streets roared around me as I burst out onto Center Street. Horns honked. Pedestrians darted. I dashed toward the subway entrance, heart pounding. The station stairs loomed like a steep climb, and as I hurtled down, my phone rang, an unknown number flashing Dad. I ignored it, inhaled, and vaulted onto a downtown train just as the doors slid shut. The car was crowded. I squeezed past a construction worker in a neon vest, clinging to the pole as the train lurched. Skidding to a stop at 14th Street, Union Square, I leapt off elbows, grazing shocked commuters. I wove through the crowd, up the station exit rain from 10 minutes ago, still puddling the sidewalk. WeWork's glass facade bow shimmered at the corner people inside, already at their desks, screens glowing. My phone buzzed again, another text from Dad: "Nice try, but you can't run forever." Before I could reply if I dared, my eyes locked on the revolving door of WeWork. The time read 9:59 a.m. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and stepped inside, ready to pitch to fight and to outmaneuver the last move my father would make. But as the doors swung shut behind me, I realized something I'd overlooked: my badge from CFPB was still pinned to my coat. And beyond the glass, someone recognized me. A hand pressed against the window, my father's reflection staring back, lips curved in a triumphant grin. The revolving doors swished shut behind me as I stepped into WeWork's soaring atrium. The scent of fresh paint and coffee beans filling my lungs, my pulse thundered not just from the morning's mad dash, but from the sight of him, my father's reflection, pale and furious, looming behind the glass. I squared my shoulders prickling, as though the building itself dared me to turn and run. Instead, I strode toward the reception badge tucked out of sight, clutching my portfolio like a shield. Marcus met me at the desk suit, crisp eyes sharp. He offered a quick nod, his silent promise that I wasn't alone. We slipped into the conference room on the 12th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a quilt of city blocks, below each one buzzing with life, untethered by family drama. My pitch lay before me, mock-ups of a national campaign for a nonprofit, vibrant logos that spoke of hope and resilience, symbolic prisms breaking from a shattered glass motif I'd sketched by lightning in that Catskills cabin. As I spoke, I felt every muscle align, my voice steady, my gestures fluid, the room's tension melting into curiosity. When I projected the slide about personal stories, testimonials of people who'd weathered betrayal, I saw heads nod. Even the stoic account managers leaned in. No sooner had I closed with "This campaign isn't just marketing, it's a movement," than the door cracked open. Security hovered at the frame. I tensed, heart skittering. But it wasn't my father. They steadied, a tall man in a gray hoodie, face obscured. He carried a slim folder. Lisa Chang, the Brooklyn Eagle reporter, slipped inside and whispered urgently, "Your dad tried to bribe me, offered to kill the story. I insisted on transparency." She handed me the folder, court filings, voicemail transcripts of Dad threatening me, a map showing his clients' addresses, along with notes on their contacts. Every lie he'd spun was laid bare. Marcus exhaled a breath I felt in my chest. With this, we moved forward even stronger. He turned to the team legal prep, the public statement. "We'll go live at noon." My cheeks heated as laptops flicked open. WeWork's screens lit up with the campaign's bold tagline, "Reclaim your voice." Call to action buttons glowed red, "Stand up, speak out." The room erupted into applause. My father's attempt at sabotage had only amplified our message. I pressed a hand to my heart, a symbol of victory forged from every scar he'd inflicted. After the meeting, I stepped into the lobby, where Linda Cheng was waiting, notebook poised. Her eyes were bright with that journalist's hunger for truth. I shared quick sound bites. The CFPB was investigating, the agency contract was signed, and the Eagle would run the expose online tonight. Outside traffic pulsed beneath Manhattan's steel veins as photographers snapped discreet shots through the glass facade. I realized I'd become a story bigger than my own. My struggle had morphed into a beacon for anyone feeling trapped by family or fortune. Tina appeared at my side phone in hand, voice low. "Sawyer called. He's arranging a mediation meeting. Gabriella wants to apologize in person." Relief and apprehension tangled in my chest. Could I trust them now that I'd rebuilt my life without them? I slipped my hand into Tina's, finding solace in her warmth. Together, we wove through co-working desks toward the exit agency staff, nodding, some offering quiet congratulations. I felt the weight of decades lift with each step. On the sidewalk, a light rain began to fall, shimmering under the neon WeWork sign. My phone buzzed an unknown number. I nearly ignored it, but something stopped me. The message read, "Congratulations, Emma. They think you've won." But Jessica wasn't who she said she was. "Come to 14 North 5th Street at midnight if you want the rest of the story." My breath caught in my throat. The city rush faded into a hum as I stared at the words. Behind me, Tina squeezed my arm, and for a heartbeat, I considered throwing my phone into the East River. Instead, I typed back, "Who are you?" The rain fell harder, pattering against the pavement like the ticking of a clock. Midnight was still hours away, but I already knew I'd be there. The street was empty at midnight, the only sound the click-clack of my boots on wet pavement. I stood before 14 North 5th Street, heart drumming in my ears as I punched the buzzer. A slot glowed Jessica. My breath steamed in the cool air. Moments later, the door sighed open, and a woman in a dark coat stepped into the foyer, face half hidden by shadows. "Emma," she whispered, voice familiar yet different. I nodded, clutching my leather portfolio. She led me up a narrow staircase to a small office, lit by a single desk lamp. On the wall hung CFPB certificates and a sealed envelope stamped "Confidential." My pulse skipped. She closed the door, flipped on the lamp, and I finally saw her, clearly not the hesitant, apologetic host from the Catskills, but Agent Marisol Hernandez, CFPB investigator. "I'm not Jessica," she said softly, removing a hood. "That was my cover name." I swallowed. Everything clicked, the hotspot drop off the propane heater, the guest book note. "You lied to me," I said, anger and relief warring in my chest. She slid a stack of documents across the desk. Affidavits, bank statements, signed confessions from neighbors who'd cheered Dad's humiliation. "I posed as Airbnb host to protect you," she explained. "Your father tried to bribe me to evict you for real. I had to keep you safe, gather evidence without tipping him off." My hands shook as I touched the papers that would seal his downfall. "Why go this far?" I whispered. Her eyes softened. "Because people like you deserve someone in their corner. Someone who won't let power and money hide the truth." Tears stung my eyes. For the first time, I wasn't alone. She handed me a final file, a warrant signed that morning, authorizing IRS and CFPB agents to search my parents' house, seize their records, and freeze assets. "Tonight," she said, "they'll know the stakes are real." My heartbeat thundered. Justice was imminent. Agent Hernandez slipped me a burner phone. "Use this to coordinate with Marcus's legal team. They'll be watching for any parental retaliation after headlines hit." She sealed the office door behind her, and I stepped back into the hush of the night, portfolio, heavier purpose, clearer. At dawn, headlines exploded across screens, suburban scandal parents. Under federal investigation splashed in bold. My phone rang off the hook, text threads, brimmed with support from strangers who saw their own battles in my story. By afternoon, Dad's construction company had accounts frozen, his board ousted him as CEO. Gabriella's husband quietly slipped out of town, and Sawyer, finally seeing his little sister's courage, texted, "I'm here when you're ready." Marcus called to say our campaign launch had become a rallying cry, sponsors doubling their pledges in solidarity. That evening, I arrived at the Reed & Cooper penthouse for the Reclaim Your Voice Gala, the nonprofit's holiday campaign shining on every wall. Projected behind me was an image shattered glass, morphing into a mosaic of faces, each one a person who'd reclaimed dignity after injustice. I stood before hundreds of supporters and cameras, my chest tight with emotion. I began softly. "I never imagined my fight would become yours. When my home was torn apart, I thought I was alone. But together, we turned shame into strength. We proved that no one has the right to define your worth." A hush fell, then applause rose like a wave. I spotted Sawyer at the back, eyes glistening. Gabriella stood beside him, cheeks flushed, hand over her heart. Agent Hernandez stood off to the side, nodding once before fading into the crowd. The campaign video played real stories of people who'd faced eviction identity theft, corporate greed, and found justice through collective action. As the last frame faded, I raised a glass of sparkling cider to everyone who believed in me. When my own family tried to bury me alive, this victory is ours. Later on the rooftop terrace, overlooking the city skyline, I found Tina leaning against the railing, wind-whipping her hair. She handed me a small box, a keepsake, a fragment of spray-painted wood from that first day on the driveway, encased in acrylic. A reminder, she said, voice soft, of how far you've come. I traced the grain, feeling both ache and triumph. "Thank you," I whispered. She smiled. "We're family." That's something he can't erase. As night deepened, I slipped away from the gala, stepping onto a quiet fire escape. The city lights pulsed below, a million stories unfolding. I closed my eyes and inhaled the cool air, no longer weighed down by fear or shame, but buoyed by purpose. I had reclaimed my voice, and in doing so, helped others reclaim theirs. The last sheens of doubt fell away like shards of broken glass beneath my feet. My phone buzzed one final time, a text from Linda Chang, front page in tomorrow's Brooklyn Eagle. "Proud of you, Emma." I typed back, "Thank you for giving me my story." As I pocketed the phone, a gust of wind scattered a few cherry blossom petals from a terrace planter. They danced around me in the glow of street lamps, fragile but resilient. I leaned out over the railing, looking at the city that had both tested me and embraced me. Somewhere out there, my parents were facing consequences of their own making, but I wasn't looking back. My future stretched ahead, bright with possibility, rooted in authenticity. Below, an ambulance siren wailed in the distance, another reminder that life's battles never truly end. But as I stepped back inside, closing the fire escape door behind me, I knew I was ready. Every twist, every betrayal, every voice that cheered or jeered had led me here, standing tall. Voice reclaimed, heart wide open for whatever came next. Story 2. I'm typing this with my thumbs still trembling. Anger does that. It sneaks into your muscles long after the shouting stops. My name is Rowan Clark, 31, senior software architect by day, retro arcade restorer by night. In my family, that translates to the careless kid who never grew up. Mom Evelyn, 59, former ballet teacher, swears I live in a neon cave. Dad Martin, 62, retired airline captain, doesn't argue because he hates conflict almost as much as he loves vintage wine. My gold-plated sister, Bianca, 37, is a mergers and acquisitions superstar. My still shiny brother, Leo, 27, is 2 semesters from finishing med school. I'm the middle note nobody hears unless it's off-key. Thanksgiving was meant to be civil. Bianca's fiancé, Marcus Hale, a handsome local council up-and-comer, was paraded like a conquering hero. Leo brought anatomy flashcards to the table so Dad could brag about the future Dr. Clark. I came bearing a raspberry cheesecake no one touched. Dinner conversations started with harmless weather talk. It pivoted, as it always does, to my life choices. Still wasting paychecks on pixelated antiques, Bianca asked Butterknife, tapping her plate like a judge's gavel. I smiled. They're limited-run cabinets, worth more every year. Sure, Rowan. She leaned in. Collectors call it investment. Normal adults call it delusion. Laughter fluttered around the table like bored pigeons. Mom tried a half-hearted Bianca be nice, but her eyes stayed fixed on my uncombed bangs. Marcus added. Some of us prefer assets that don't plug into the wall. Even Leo chuckled, cheeks pink with secondhand embarrassment. I swallowed my pride with a spoonful of cold potatoes. Then Bianca stood, crystal glass raised. To family, except the branch that refuses to bloom. The line landed. Perfect, sharp, photogenic. Every cousin and aunt present winced, yet no one contradicted her. I set my fork down, excused myself, and walked into the frosty backyard. Breath fogged, chest burned, and the cheesecake sat untouched on the sideboard, like proof I'd never really belonged. Mom texted later. You know your sister jokes when she drinks. Dad wrote nothing. Leo sent a shrug emoji. I muted the group chat for my sanity. 3 weeks of silence. Then Bianca rang at 7 a.m. on a Monday, voice sugary with urgency. Ro, darling, wedding planning is, oh my god, exploding Tuscany September. Villa Violetta, overlooks vineyards. We locked the date. Sounds expensive, I murmured, already opening my calendar. It is. That's why I'm calling. We're a bit short after the venue deposit. Could you cover the wine pairing experience? Only $70,000. You're flush, right? Crypto treated you well. I thought I'd misheard. 70,000 euros for wine. Not just wine heritage, she insisted. You'd be investing in love. The audacity was cinematic. Same woman who humiliated me now wanted a blank check. I exhaled slowly. No, B, I'm not your bank. Click. She hung up without a goodbye. By lunch, I'd received a flurry of messages. Mom, be the bigger person. Weddings are once in a lifetime. Dad, let's chat over a bottle, son. Leo bro, just help her. Stress is bad for the baby. What baby? Unknown number, pay up or stay home. Probably Marcus. I blocked them all for 48 glorious hours. Silence tasted better than any holiday pie. But a story this messy never ends quietly. On the third night, my doorbell rang at 11 p.m., and when I checked the peephole, I saw Mom's tear-streaked face, Dad behind her fists clenched. That's where this part ends. Next, I'll explain why they drove 2 hours in the dark, what secret Leo accidentally leaked, and how one unsigned check threatened to unravel our entire family fortune. I opened the door before the bell shrieked a second time, and the corridor light carved harsh shadows across Mom's mascara-streaked cheeks, while Dad hovered behind her with the stiff posture he once saved for unruly co-pilots. They stepped inside, dripping November rain onto the concrete floor of my lobby. And without waiting for an invitation, Dad launched the sort of speech that always begins with my full name. Rowan Elliott Clark, you are about to destroy everything your grandfather built. The sentence froze me harder than the weather. Grandpa Peter, a railway tycoon turned small-town philanthropist, had died 5 years earlier, leaving behind a complicated trust locked by a single clause. The estate could be liquidated only if every direct descendant signed the release. Bianca needed my agreement not for wine, but to convert our ancestral manor into seed money for her Tuscan ceremony, and apparently her unborn child. Leo had spilled the pregnancy secret after too much mulled cider, and now the family was in emergency damage control mode. Mom's voice quivered as she added that Marcus's mother, Vivian Hale, had already contracted an elite restoration firm to repurpose the manor into a boutique spa. Backing out would ruin both families socially and financially. So, I'm the final bolt keeping the whole aircraft together, I said, eyeing Dad's airline pin still attached to his vintage bomber jacket. He nodded, seeing the metaphor land. Mom slipped a folded paper from her purse, a signature page pre-tabbed with neon arrows that screamed "Sign here." My stomach twisted, but anger sharpened my thoughts. These were the same people who treated my hobby like a circus trick. Now that my consent equaled cash, I had become indispensable. I asked about contingencies. What if the manor stayed untouched? What if Bianca trimmed the wedding budget? What if Radical thought they respected my... No! Dad's clenched jaw answered before his words did. If you refuse, the bank will foreclose on the vineyard deposit. Bianca will forfeit her spot at the villa, and we will be the laughingstock of Westmere society. In other words, shame was a more potent currency than love. I felt the old middle child claustrophobia tightening around my ribs, but something new ignited beneath it resolve. I told them I'd think, then guided them back to the elevator, promising an update within 48 hours. They left wet footprints and a silence so thick it hummed. Minutes later, my phone pinged Aunt Claudia Mom's estranged younger sister, an art theft investigator, who once taught me that secrets rot in darkness. Her text: Marcus owes $500,000 to private investors. Don't sign a thing. She attached a scanned invoice stamped urgent. My pulse hammered. If Marcus was using Bianca and our heritage to plug holes in his political ambitions, I needed confirmation. I called Claudia. She answered from a train rattling through dawn someplace in Europe, and in 2 breathless minutes, she outlined everything Marcus had been funneling council grants into shell nonprofits. Vivian had leveraged her charity board to mask the transfers, and a whistleblower named Ezra Wren, former accountant, had gone missing after filing a complaint. Claudia had traced payments to a holding firm registered under Bianca's maiden initials without her knowledge. The trap was elegant. Once the manor sold, funds would wash through Tuscany, clearing Marcus's slate while implicating the Clark Trust as collateral. My sister, pregnant and oblivious, was collateral damage. The injustice seared me hotter than Bianca's dinner jabs ever had. I needed leverage and allies. I thought of my retro arcade community. One friend stood out: Celine Park, former college sweetheart turned investigative podcaster who specialized in municipal corruption. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since I ghosted her for my career pivot. But if anyone could dismantle Marcus's facade, it was Celine. I drafted a groveling apology mixed with a story pitch titled Blood Money in Baroque Bottles and hit send. While I waited, I powered up my rarest cabinet, Starfarer 1984 Grandpa's gift on my 12th birthday, and dug through its locked coin box where I kept sentimental oddities. Among tokens and a faded roller rink wristband lay a sealed envelope addressed in Grandpa's looping script for Rowan to be opened when family loyalty feels heavier than joy. My breath caught. The wax seal cracked like brittle ice, revealing a handwritten letter and a USB drive. The letter described a secondary trust Grandpa had left exclusively to me, funds allocated for endeavors preserving Wonder contingent on my refusal to sell the manor. The USB Grandpa wrote contained evidence of inappropriate land deals he suspected town officials would attempt after his death. He urged me to guard our legacy against those who valued profit over people. My hands trembled with the same electric fury I felt after Bianca's toast, only now it was braided with purpose. Just then, Celine responded with a single line: "I've been tracking Hale for months. Let's burn his paper castle." A link followed encrypted upload portal. I glanced at the signature page still on my coffee table, its neon arrows fading under the dim kitchen light, and realized I finally held the joystick instead of mashing buttons. I sent Celine high-resolution scans of every document Claudia had provided, plus Grandpa's letter, and promised full access to the USB contents once decrypted. 48 hours, Dad had said. Good. I would use every minute. As dawn seeped through the blinds, I drafted 3 new objectives. Expose Marcus's debt web, protect Bianca and her baby from collateral fallout, and if possible, rekindle the wonder Grandpa believed lived in me. The arcade lights blinked in agreement, pixel galaxies ready for battle. Celine moved faster than a late-level speedrunner. By nightfall, she cracked the USB and called me on an encrypted line, her voice crackling with triumph as she walked me through archived emails between Marcus Vivian and 2 city planning executives who discussed accelerated zoning variances in exchange for off-book campaign bundles. Grandpa had copied the entire chain months before his stroke, clearly suspecting a land grab aimed at our manor and the neighboring community garden he'd funded for veterans. With proof in hand, we plotted 3 tracks. Track 1, give Bianca an unfiltered look at her fiancé before the contract signing in 42 hours. Track 2, alert Ezra Wren, assuming he was still alive. Track 3, seed a teaser into Celine's podcast feed to spook Marcus into mistakes. For track 1, I needed face-to-face time with my sister away from Hale influence, so I bribed her favorite barista for Bianca's exact coffee run window, then intercepted her at dawn outside Bean & Bell. She looked tired, pregnancy glow replaced by worry lines. I handed her a burner tablet already queued to the incriminating threads. She resisted, but I said, read the subject lines. If they lie, smash the tablet and I'll sign your papers. Her eyes flickered and across phrases like liquidity via Clark asset and Bianca, ignorant by design. Tears welled. Denial cracked. She whispered, "He loves me," yet her grip trembled. I told her love never needs covert spreadsheets. I left the tablet and walked away, giving her space to choose truth or fantasy. Track 2 meant finding Ezra. Claudia's intel placed him at a roadside motel 3 towns east, living under an alias, shaken and broke. I drove the old truck Grandpa left me, loud exhaust, impossible to tail discreetly, and reached the motel by noon. Ezra opened the door after I recited a code phrase Claudia supplied. Even Rust remembers. He was gaunt eyes, bloodshot, clutching a portable hard drive like a life preserver. I offered safe transport and legal counsel funded by Grandpa's secondary trust. He hesitated until I mentioned Celine. Turns out he had sent her anonymous tips months earlier. We packed his things and headed back toward Westmere, my phone vibrating nonstop with unknown numbers I ignored. I.e. Nikki. Track 3 triggered itself while we drove. Celine posted a 90-second trailer titled The Vineyard Vipers, hinting at systemic graft, concluding with the line, "Follow the corks, and you'll find the corpses." 20 minutes later, Marcus lit up my screen with threats of defamation suits and unthinkable consequences. I replied with a single emoji, the joystick, and silenced his number. Back in town, I stashed Ezra at Claudia's townhouse, filled with antique sculptures she restored between cases. She welcomed him with soup and a non-disclosure agreement. Meanwhile, Dad summoned me to the airfield hangar he used as a hobby workshop. I found him sanding a model biplane jaw, flexing disappointment, radiating like turbine heat. He accused me of orchestrating family ruin for petty revenge. I countered with printed emails. He skimmed face bleaching as decades of pilot discipline battled paternal instinct. If this is real, he said, we pull the landing gear now. Progress, but Mom remained silent, likely torn between her dancer's poise and maternal panic. Night crawled in storm clouds, bruising the horizon. Bianca called from an unknown line voice hoarse, asking to meet at Grandpa's manor neutral ground within the hour. I agreed, sensing climax. I armed myself with 3 allies, Celine arriving with recording gear, Ezra clutching the master ledger, and Dad finally convinced, bringing the family attorney. We reached the manor's grand foyer. At the same moment, Bianca and Marcus entered from the terrace. Candlelight flickered over peeling murals, the estate already half-stripped by contractors. Bianca's tear-stained cheeks told me she'd read more than subject lines. Marcus attempted charm, claiming everything was accountant error, but Celine's mic was live. Ezra's files projected onto the foyer wall via portable beam, and the attorney read aloud specific felony statutes. When Dad stepped beside me instead of Marcus, the councilman's smile cracked. He grabbed Bianca's arm, urging her to leave, but she pulled free, palms protectively over her belly. In that instant, Vivian stormed in with 2 security guards waving a cease and desist order that Celine shredded on camera. Chaos brewed thunder, echoing overhead. But before tempers detonated, Leo burst through the front door, holding an ultrasound photo. He had just confirmed Bianca was carrying twins and shouted, "This stops now. Those babies deserve a family, not a franchise." The unexpected ally had spoken. Guards hesitated. Vivian faltered. Marcus saw public optics collapsing. I took the opening laid, Grandpa's letter, on a marble pedestal and declared my formal refusal to sign. The trust release died on that breath. Marcus's vineyard dream and debt relief scheme died with it. Police sirens in the distance told me Celine's leak had reached authorities. Sirens howled closer, blue and red strobes splashing over cracked frescoes as police entered the foyer and cuffed Marcus first, Vivian second. Bianca crumpled onto the balustrade, twin heartbeat printouts fluttering from her hand, while Dad shielded her from flash photography. I felt a strange calm, like standing in the eye of a storm I'd spent years pretending didn't exist. Officers collected Ezra's hard drive and Celine's raw footage as evidence. Both were escorted to make formal statements. Mom finally arrived, rain-soaked ballet spine trembling. She ran to Bianca, then looked at me with an apology carved into her eyes. I nodded we'd talk later, yet the night refused to settle. 2 squad cars had barely turned off the gravel drive when a black SUV screeched in its headlights, killing the darkness. Out stepped Counselor Harwood, Marcus's political mentor, flanked by a lawyer fresh from an emergency injunction. Harwood claimed the manor was now a hazardous site, due for immediate seizure under a heritage preservation loophole he had drafted months earlier. One more cog in the Hale machine. The officer in charge hesitated. Paperwork bore the city seal. If the manor became municipal property before dawn, Hale debts might still vanish through insurance maneuvers. Grandpa's legacy would shift from family haven to corporate carcass. I felt heat surge behind my eyes, but forced clarity. 30 yards away sat the estate's old generator shack, converted by Grandpa into a security hub with analog switches and, crucially, independent power. If we could prove the manor's structural integrity and present documentation of ongoing private restoration, Harwood's claim would stall. I needed time, maybe 6 hours before courthouse doors opened. Celine caught my glance. Without speaking, we sprinted through the side corridor while cops and lawyers argued in the foyer. Wind moaned through busted, stained glass dust swirling like ghosts. We reached the shack. Its lock was rusted, but gave under a well-aimed boot. Inside, brass dials and cathode monitors hummed faintly. Grandpa adored redundancies. Nothing here required internet-only diesel and determination. I flipped breakers and sensor feeds blinked alive motion detectors, humidity gauges, load-bearing strain meters. Celine's eyes widened. This is a living X-ray of the house. Exactly. Every metric read green. I snapped photos with timestamp overlays and sent them to Dad, who relayed them to the family lawyer preparing an emergency countersuit. Meanwhile, Harwood's crew deployed hazard tape. We had minutes before they forced everyone out. Celine suggested a bolder move stream the data publicly. Her podcast had spiked overnight. Thousands of listeners were hungry. She linked her phone to the analog console via a capture dongle and went live camera panning across glowing gauges while she narrated, "The only danger in this manor is the greed trying to gut it." Comments exploded. More crucially, so did City Hall phone lines, pressure Harwood hadn't predicted. He stormed toward the shack, shouting, "Cease orders," but police blocked his path, citing active investigation. We bought another hour. Bianca, still shaky, joined us inside. She stared at sensor screens, whispered that Grandpa used to quiz her on their colors: green for good, yellow for caution, red for evacuate. All green. Tears slid down her cheeks. She turned to me. "Save it, Rowan. For them." She touched her belly. Resolve settled across her features like armor. My sister was back. Midnight bled into 2 a.m. when the estate lights flickered. Celine frowned, generator fuel low. Harwood noticed too. He signaled his driver, who slipped behind the manor toward the propane tanks. Sabotage. I grabbed a flashlight and followed through hedges heavy with brambles. The driver knelt by the main valve wrench poised. I confronted him with nothing but conviction and a smartphone set to record. He swung. I ducked, years of arcade reflexes paying off, and wedged the flashlight between his knees. He fell, cursing. Police arrived seconds later and hauled him away on attempted vandalism. Generator chugged back to full power. Lights steadied. Up in the nursery wing, a motion sensor flashed yellow, unexpected movement. Ezra, reviewing camera feeds from the shack, flagged it. Harwood's lawyer was prowling the hall with a briefcase, likely hunting documents to twist in court. Bianca insisted on coming. She feared for family heirlooms. We climbed the grand staircase floorboards, groaning but solid. Thunder shook the panes as we reached Grandpa's study. Inside, the lawyer rifled through antique drawers. He spun when we entered, hand slipping into the briefcase. Something metallic glinted. Fear hollowed my gut, but before he drew anything, Bianca stepped forward, voice steely. "What you're doing is illegal. Leave now or I testify you threatened my unborn children." Her courage stunned even him. He backed away, muttering about misunderstandings, and officers escorted him out. The study settled into hushed stillness. I noticed Grandpa's old aviator clock had stopped at 12:21, the exact minute he suffered his fatal stroke. I wound it. Gears clicked, hands resumed. Bianca exhaled, thanking me for resetting time. Downstairs, Counselor Harwood, now cornered by live stream questions and police inquiry, accepted defeat. He withdrew his injunction, blaming clerical confusion, but the damage to his reputation was irreversible. News drones hovered above the manor broadcasting his retreat. By 4 a.m., every unauthorized vehicle was gone. Rain eased into mist sirens muted, and the manor sighed as though grateful. Mom brewed tea in the dark kitchen, offering me a mug with trembling fingers. She apologized for every dismissive laugh, every moment she chose harmony over my dignity. I told her growth mattered more than retroactive perfection. We hugged for the first time since my college graduation. Dawn tinted the horizon peach. Dad and the attorney filed our restoration affidavit with digital timestamps and community garden appraisals. City seizure was off the table. Celine's episode hit #1 in ethics podcasts before sunrise. Ezra accepted a whistleblower protection deal. Marcus and Vivian faced arraignment at noon for fraud conspiracy and attempted destruction of heritage property. As sunlight streamed through repaired breakers in the stained glass atrium, Grandpa's favorite hymn began playing, triggered by a motion sensor linked to the clock I'd rewound. Maybe coincidence, maybe design. But the melody wrapped the crumbling halls in promise. The morning of the arraignment arrived like a held breath. Mist clung to courthouse steps, while reporters clustered hungry for collapse or redemption. I walked Bianca to the entrance, her resolve solid despite nausea that came in waves. Dad escorted Mom behind us, Celine and Ezra flanked by plainclothes marshals. Inside, polished wood and echoing heels amplified every heartbeat. Marcus and Vivian, shackled but defiant, sat at the defense table beside a new attorney rumored to charge 5 figures an hour. Judge Adair Stern, eyes over half-moon glasses, opened with the indictments: fraud, conspiracy, attempted heritage, sabotage, and obstruction. The prosecutor presented Ezra's ledgers, Celine's recordings, and Grandpa's email cache, weaving a timeline that painted the Hales as architects of a scheme to launder debt through civic grants and a falsified vineyard venture. The defense countered with accusations of entrapment, claiming I had manipulated evidence for personal gain. My testimony followed. I spoke plainly of Bianca's request, the midnight ultimatum. Claudia's documents, the letter from Grandpa, emphasizing that my motive was preservation, not profit. The courtroom felt like a simmering kettle. Each sentence hissed against the defense's narrative. Then the prosecution unveiled the surprise, a sealed blueprint discovered in Grandpa's study during evidence cataloging. Judge Adair allowed its introduction after a tense sidebar. The drawing revealed a subterranean rail spur running beneath the manor to an abandoned depot outside town, an asset registered to Clark Transit Limited dormant since the 1970s, but still holding mineral rights and easement privileges across city land. Those rights directly undercut Councillor Harwood's proposed luxury redevelopment district, explaining the desperate push to seize the property. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even Marcus blanched. The judge granted a recess for counsel to review the new file. In the hallway, Bianca pulled me aside, eyes shining with cautious hope. If the spur could be restored, the manor might fund itself through freight leases, sparing us from selling a single brick. She asked whether I could resurrect a railway the way I revive arcade cabinets. I laughed at the scale difference, but nodded. Engineering principles remain true whether circuits or steel. Recess ended. Court resumed. The defense tried a new angle that Grandpa's health issues made the blueprint unreliable, but Ezra produced a notarized update from 6 months before Grandpa's stroke, confirming his intent to reactivate the line as a veterans vocational program. Defense momentum collapsed. Marcus demanded a private plea deal, but the prosecutor refused, citing public interest. Judge Adair scheduled a full trial, yet denied bail, deeming the Hales' flight risks. As deputies led them away, Marcus locked eyes with me, rage curdling into something like respect or fear. I couldn't tell which. Outside, cameras flashed. Townsfolk cheered, some offered homemade cookies to Bianca, as if sugar could mend trauma. Councillor Harwood resigned by noon, citing health. City Hall scrambled, announcing a review of every grant issued in the last decade. That afternoon, Dad gathered us in the manor's dining room, still dusty, yet strangely vibrant, and suggested we form a family foundation to manage both the estate and the rail project. Mom proposed naming it Wonderworks, honoring Grandpa's belief that wonder fuels progress. Bianca agreed on the condition that community veterans sit on the board. Leo, finishing finals, volunteered free clinic days once the training center opened. Even Claudia, patched in by video from a Lisbon symposium, pledged to curate an exhibition on ethical restoration. The pieces of our fractured clan clicked like gears finding true alignment. Logistics, though, loomed large. The rail tunnel had flooded 10 years prior. Permits lapsed. Capital-intensive rehab awaited. I offered to liquidate a portion of my crypto portfolio, an arcade collection, shocking everyone. Investing in love. I said, borrowing Bianca's earlier phrase. She squeezed my hand, apology and gratitude collapsing into silent understanding. That night, I returned to my apartment to catalog machines for auction. In the glow of pixelated starfields, I felt a pang. Letting go of treasures, once mocked by my family, now felt like shedding old skin. Celine called voice giddy. Her episode had triggered a federal audit into municipal procurement. She asked for an exclusive on the rail renaissance. I agreed, stipulating that veterans' voices lead the narrative. Ezra, meanwhile, drafted grant proposals tapping federal infrastructure funds. Momentum built like a gathering storm, but of the cleansing kind. Yet one question gnawed at me. Who else had known about the spur? Harwood was cunning, but not visionary. Someone deeper had mapped the loophole. Digging through Grandpa's archived drives, I unearthed encrypted correspondence between him and a PR regarding land use lobbyists. Initials could match Preston Rourke's state senator overseeing transportation committees. If true, our fight might escalate beyond county lines. I forwarded files to Celine. She replied with a single word, incoming. Celine's single-word text cracked open a week of thunder. Federal investigators, spurred by her podcast and Ezra's ledgers, probed the state's transportation committee. Senator Preston Rourke's slick mustache and folksy charm flew back from a Napa conference to stage manage the damage. He denied links to the Hale Empire, but metadata shows no mercy. Grandpa's encrypted emails timed, dated, and geotagged their meetings. Wonderworks filed a whistleblower brief attaching proof that Rourke's shell pack funded Harwood's campaign and Marcus's vineyard subsidy. The brief triggered subpoenas. Rourke's office answered by smearing my name, calling me a crypto-speculating gamer hijacking public infrastructure. Cute. They underestimated how fast truth travels when streamed at 60 fps. Celine dropped a 5-part expose. Veterans posted reaction videos describing planned apprenticeships on the revived spur. TikTok stitched their testimonies with clips of my retro cabinets booting up nostalgia colliding with civic pride. Rourke's approval rating slid like a greased pinball. We still needed capital. Ezra and Dad pitched the rail project to the Federal Rail Modernization Board. In D.C., a panel of steely planners reviewed 3D renderings projected from Grandpa's original schematics, plus my CAD updates. The chair asked why a decaying manor deserved federal money. I answered, because every town has a forgotten track. Restore one, and you restore belief. Silence, then applause. Grant secured $12 million over 4 years contingent on matching funds. Bianca surprised everyone by liquidating half her stock options. She quipped, asset that doesn't plug into the wall. The room laughed with her, not at me. Rourke's final gambit came 3 nights later. A lobbyist filed an injunction claiming Wonderworks lacked proper environmental clearance. Claudia flew in, dragging a conservator of record and soil core data, proving the tunnel's runoff already met EPA thresholds. Judge tossed the injunction by breakfast. That same morning, the State Ethics Board froze Rourke's assets. He resigned on live TV, sweat beading under the studio lights. I watched from the manor's music room, arcades silenced out of respect. For once, pixels weren't needed. Reality glowed brighter. Construction crews arrived midsummer. Veterans donned hard hats, cleared silt-relayed steel. Leo finished med school, set up a mobile clinic in a refurbished dining car. Dad handled logistics like flight plans. Mom choreographed a community festival on the manicured lawn, her old students performing modern ballet on temporary platforms, a new tradition born from reclaimed space. Wonderworks became the heartbeat of Westmere. Reporters asked for sound bites. I kept them short. Legacy is a multiplayer game. You either share the quarters or play alone. Celine and I finally had that overdue conversation beneath the station's archway. She forgave my ghosting. I thanked her for lighting the path. We decided to keep professional and personal rails separate, yet parallel two lines, never crossing but always near. Autumn painted the hills burnt gold when Bianca went into labor. Thunder rumbled exactly like the night Marcus fell, but this time it felt like applause from the sky. Twin girls Aurora and Lyra entered the world minutes apart as the first maintenance engine rolled down the restored spur whistle, slicing the dusk. Grandpa would have grinned. On opening day, the whole town boarded vintage coaches, pulled by a gleaming diesel-electric hybrid named Peter's Promise. I delivered the keynote from the observation platform. These tracks carried coal a century ago. Today they'll carry possibilities. Jobs supplies ideas. Remember, wonder isn't child's play. It's civilization's fuel. As we accelerated, I glanced back. The manor's stained glass caught dawn like pixels in a colossal screen, each pane blazing turquoise amber rose. Up front, Bianca held her daughters beside the locomotive's throttle next generation tiny fingers on iron heritage. Celine filmed the moment. Leo waved from the clinic car. Claudia sketched the scene for her exhibition. Mom wiped tears behind aviator shades. Dad saluted the horizon the way pilots greet clear skies. My phone buzzed with an email from an auction house confirming my last cabinet had sold. I felt no loss, only lightness. The journey ahead was wide and sunlit steel, humming beneath family around community aboard. And me, Rowan Clark, once the unheard middle note conducting a symphony of motion. I closed my eyes, letting the rhythm write the final line. Sometimes the game doesn't end, it levels up.